If you're a parent or share a fridge with someone, Instacart is about to make grocery shopping so much easier. Because with family carts, you can share a cart with your partner and each add the items you want. Since between the two of you, odds are you'll both remember everything you need. And this way, you'll never have to eat milkless cereal again. So minimize the stress of the weekly shop with family carts. Download the Instacart app and get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes. Plus, enjoy $0 delivery fees on your first 3 orders. Service fees apply. For 3 orders in 14 days, excludes restaurants.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 93 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you, man?
I'm doing good, man. How about you?
I'm doing great, man.
Yeah, man. I know. You know, I'm doing all right. I think I told you I had a rough week. I had a rough couple weeks, actually.
You're trying to bounce back into normal Gibby form.
Yeah, just, getting my head straight on and just moving forward and just wish everybody the best out there.
So we're back. We were off last week.
Yeah, we were.
Put out a Patreon episode.
You've been out for a lot of weeks.
I've been out for a lot of weeks.
Yeah.
I'm about ready to be out permanently.
Yeah, I think you're going to hand in your work equipment, your laptop here in a few days.
Yep, in a few days. That'll be it for me.
Yeah.
Now, I do want to make an announcement. So we were off last week. We've taken some weeks off to do some Patreon episodes. Gibby and I have talked about it, and we're committing to 52 episodes in 2019.
Yeah.
There will be an unsolved episode every single week.
So,
and we'll still do the Patreon.
Yeah, we're still going to do the Patreon episodes. And, of course, always do TCAT as well. So you should have plenty to listen to. And I think that if you jump on Patreon, you're like those episodes as well.
You could have as many as, what? Beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop, boop. Close to 120 episodes a year.
Well, easily, yeah.
Of
true crime all the time.
All right, Gibbs, we have some Patreon shout-outs.
Let's do it.
Let's give those. We had Christine Peterson.
Hey, thank you, Christine.
Maggie Rudy.
Hey, Maggie and Rudy.
Ivy Lee.
Hey, Ivy.
Crystal Shinoski.
Hey, Shinoski.
Michelle Swango.
Michelle.
Hopefully not related to Dr. Michael Swango, or episode that we did on True Crime All the Time. Randy Biard.
Hey, Randy.
Cheryl Tyrell.
Hey, Cheryl Tyrell.
Amy Wood.
Thank you, Amy.
Brandon Brown.
Brandon Brown, I appreciate that, man.
Marina Bingston.
Hey, thank you, Marina.
Michelle Ray jumped out at her highest level.
Michelle, thank you.
Barbara Julian.
Hey, thanks, Barbara.
Aaron Barzak.
Hey, thank you, Barzak.
Will Catan Jr.
Hey, thank you, Will.
Chris's brother.
Yeah.
Sarah Locke.
Hey, Sarah.
Buddy Kuchta.
Hey, thanks, Buddy Elf.
Buddy, it always comes back to Elf with you.
Yeah.
Angie Boswell.
Thank you, Angie.
Joe A. Walters.
Hey, Joe.
Kristen Smith, who's been a Patreon supporter for a long time. Great supporter of the show. She upped her patronage.
Yeah, she upped that, and she's always doing her best to let people know about it on social media. And she's just a really good person, and I hope everything's going well for you.
Yep, we appreciate that. And William Cordell.
Hey, William, thank you.
Then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs. So this week we selected the Minds of Madness.
Minds of Madness.
Tyler and Beck put out an amazing true crime podcast.
Yeah.
They support us on Patreon. We support them. It's kind of like we should just keep our money, but it's more symbolic than anything else. The support.
Sure is.
Just letting each other know. And we support a bunch of other true crime podcasts. Just letting them know that we're behind them. We appreciate them. And it's kind of cool the way that the true crime podcast community works.
Yeah.
And I'm sure other genres of podcasts do too, but I think true crime specifically, That's a group of people that are always willing to help each other out.
Yeah.
You and I have helped podcasters out when they first started.
Sure we have.
We got some help from other podcasts when we first started.
We did.
It's kind of how it works.
It's a good group of individuals.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. And I love when a few times we get together a year and get to see people and,
And you and I may have something coming up with Tyler and Beck live and in person.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time.
We'll announce probably in the next month or so.
Maybe somebody will hang out with me.
Maybe.
Yeah.
All right, we had PayPal as well. We had Darcy Judd.
Hey, thanks, Darcy.
Hannah Laughlin.
Hannah, thank you.
Alexandra Eklund.
Ooh, Eklund. I got some relatives named Eklund.
Do you?
Actually, they're not named Eklund.
Okay.
They live in Eklund.
Well, you were on the right track.
I was getting there.
Not at all.
I was hooking around. Yeah.
That's so funny, man.
Yeah.
And we had Deborah Pfeiffer.
Hey, Deborah Pfeiffer.
So we appreciate that. Oh, we don't even get through Patreon. And you've got Eklund's going all over.
I said it was
the
a
place.
rough week, man. It was a rough week.
I'm cutting you some slack.
Yeah.
Not really, but I'll try.
Yeah.
So let's talk about True Crime All Time.
Let's do it.
Right now, we have an episode out on
Pedro
Lopez.
Yeah.
And boy, this is something, Gibbs. This is a guy from Colombia. We're down in South America.
I just can't believe the amount of people.
350 people.
I don't know how you go through life knowing that you've murdered that many people.
Well, first of all, you got to be soulless, heartless. There's nothing behind.
No,
there's nothing inside.
I mean, you feel nothing.
It's just all black, right? There's just nothing.
Just to feel nothing, man. Just to be numb and not feel nothing about anything. To be able to do that, it's crazy.
But they believe he murdered 350 young girls.
Man, that's a person a day in a year,
in Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. And now this is a little different. We talk about serial killers who claim to have killed X.
Yeah.
There's a lot of evidence pointing to the fact that he really did murder.
Yeah, they can kind of back the numbers up.
A lot of people. This guy is scary. And then you get into some almost unsolved like twists and turns.
Sure.
When you talk about the fact that this is a guy that was convicted of murdering 110 and gets out of prison.
Yeah.
And then at some point, nobody knows where the heck he is.
It's
shocking.
Yeah. And what was shocking for me was he's got competition.
Yeah. Yeah. In the form of Luis Garavito, who I know is on our list, will do. But yeah, South America's got some prolific serial killers. All right, Gibbs, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All Time Unsolved?
I am. Let's do it.
We are talking about the murder of 39-year-old Karen Tipton down in Decatur, Alabama. We're in the late 90s. Like I mentioned, Karen was 39 years old. She was a housewife married to a doctor named David Tipton.
Yeah, psychologist.
He was also 39. A lot of quotes from David Tipton, right, after this incident occurs about how in love he was with his wife, Karen. Said that she was prettier at 39 than she had ever been in her life.
She's hitting her prime, man.
That's what he said about her.
Yeah.
I've said the same thing about my wife.
You say it all the time.
I do. I think she's prettier now than she was the day that we met.
Yeah.
And that's not a lie. I'm not blowing smoke. It's just what I that's
she
what I
says the
believe.
same about you.
No, she does not. Unfortunately, she does not. But we get to March 12th, 1999. And David and Karen were set to go to the theater that night. And David was excited to go. He left work early to go home and get Karen to go to the theater. But when he got home, he walked through the garage into the house, just like we all do, right, when we get home from work. But he noticed the deadbolt on the door was not locked. And this wasn't typical. According to David, Karen kept that deadbolt locked. So already Gibbs, maybe a little, not unnerved, probably not the word, right? To see it unlocked. You wouldn't start to panic, but it's strange. And he found it strange.
Yeah, he did.
As he walked through the door, he called out for Karen. as he said he always did when he got home, if she wasn't already there waiting for him, greeting him at the door. She didn't answer the first time he called out, so he kept calling her name. He couldn't figure out where she was. And add on top of this, the fact that the pair had 3 children who should have been at the house as well. So David wandered through the house, and at a certain point, he found a spot of blood in the foyer, or the foyer.
Foyer?
If you want to be fancy.
Foyer.
I go foyer.
I do too.
But he sees this blood.
And it's a big foyer. So as he's walking through, he starts seeing more blood. So, of course, as you would imagine, anybody would be, you would be extremely alarmed, panicky, trying to figure out what is going on.
Yeah, I'm not panicked by the door being unlocked, but I start to see droplets of blood in the foyer of my home, and my wife's not answering. I don't know where my kids are. I'm in full panic mode.
Sure.
By that point.
Yeah, what's going on here?
And I think David was as well. He rushed up the stairs.
Sure.
Found Karen's nude body.
Yeah.
She was deceased. And obviously, as any spouse would be, David was shocked, but he managed to call 911. And on the call, he says, "My name is David Tipton." He gives his address and he says, "My wife has been killed. There's blood everywhere, and I'm really concerned about my children."
Yeah, because it was that time of the day when his kids should have been home from school, or she would have picked them up and brought them home. So he's trying to figure out, okay, I've got this terrible thing in front of me right now. My wife has been murdered, but where are my kids? Are they murdered too? Where are they at? What's going on?
So the police get on scene and they start searching for clues, not only in Karen's murder, but Gibbs, they're looking for the kids as well. Now, eventually they find out that the children are safe at school. And David would talk about later on the fact that he had to sit his 3 children down and explain to them that their mommy went to heaven. That, I can't imagine Gibbs having that conversation. I'm sure a lot of people have had to have it. Luckily, I never have, and I just can't imagine it. Heartbreaking. So investigators are looking at the crime scene, and it was extremely brutal. They discovered that Karen's purse was missing, some jewelry was missing, but one thing that wasn't missing was her diamond wedding ring. It was still on her finger. Investigators couldn't find any evidence of forced entry. And as we often talk about, right, investigators, they look at David as a suspect and almost have to, right, being the spouse. And the fact that they don't have any other leads, the no forced entries probably doesn't help. And the fact that the wedding ring wasn't taken,
right, probably
doesn't help either.
No.
But I think Gibbs, after questioning David and really after putting the timeline together, investigators clear him pretty quickly, because when they start piecing together the timeline, they find out that Karen was on a phone call with her friend a little bit before 1 p.m. that day. And she was supposed to, but did not pick up the kids at 2:30. So by their way of thinking, the murder most likely occurred between that 1 p.m. and 2:30 time frame. When they start looking into David, they're able to verify that he didn't leave the office until 3:30. So that's how I think based on that, they're able to eliminate him pretty quickly.
Right.
They released David, allowed him to return to his home, which was the crime scene.
Which is a little strange.
A little strange, but that makes me believe that they were pretty strong in their conviction that he didn't have anything to do with it.
Right.
They would have never released him back to the crime scene.
I would think they felt pretty good.
Yeah. They must have, or I don't think they would have done that. The other thing that I think David had, going for him is that he didn't have a single scratch on his body. Now, investigators didn't find any weapon at the crime scene, and it wouldn't be until about a month later that they got a break. And this happened when a man went to investigators and he told them that his nephew said something that he found very shocking. The man said his drug-addicted nephew, Daniel Wade Moore, said that he was there that day at the scene of Karen Tipton's murder.
No, he would say he didn't kill her, but he was there.
And he was at the house, apparently, to rob it. And what he told his uncle was that he and some other men broke into the house. And while Daniel Wade Moore was upstairs looking for valuables, it was the other guys he was with that killed Karen Tipton downstairs.
Yeah, that's the story that he told his uncle.
Now, investigators were able to confirm that Daniel was in the area at the time of the murder. He also wasn't able to give police an alibi.
No, he didn't have any good alibi.
That's usually not good.
Not good.
Investigators brought him into an interrogation room, and apparently they left, right, in an effort to make him sweat it out.
Yeah.
Which I think is a pretty common tactic.
I think so, too. But he does something pretty bizarre. He has a penknife. I don't know how well, I guess they're not searching you when you go in to do a typical interview. Just do fact-finding, because I don't think at this point...
But he's not arrested.
He wasn't arrested, so he had a penknife on him, and he starts stabbing himself like he was trying to kill himself. I mean, he's going to claim the whole reason that he was trying to kill himself was because the police made him feel really bad about his life, saying that, his family were good people, everybody around him was great people, but he was a loser because he was doing drugs and, just had no reason to be in the social world.
Yeah, I think they called him a junkie and, but I think he was.
Well, yeah.
I think he was addicted to drugs.
And he admits to that.
A heavy drug user.
Yeah.
Now, of course, Gibbs, the investigators are going to see this act of Daniel stabbing himself repeatedly as him being guilty.
Yeah, like, oh man, I'm caught.
Why would somebody do that?
Yeah, I don't want to be here. I don't want to get arrested. I don't want to go through this process. I'm going to try to, kill myself.
Now, eventually, Daniel is going to have this conversation with investigators. And one of the things that comes out is that he worked for the company that installed the alarm at the Tipton residence.
Just a few months prior to her death, he was in the house installing, like you said, the alarm system, which is scary because you see movies about it.
Well, you can go right back to BTK.
BTK is a prime example.
Prime example of somebody that was installing alarm systems, knew people's codes.
Yeah.
It's a scary thing to think about.
And I know that, her husband even thought, because she was really friendly, so if she remembered his face and he came up to the door, she probably would let him in thinking that he was there to check something with the alarm system. So, I mean, not saying that's how it happened, but that was something that the husband had a theory of how, this man that, just confessed got into their place.
Well, and I think investigators thought this was a likely scenario as well. What investigators did know for sure was that Karen Tipton was attacked downstairs.
Which would make sense if you're coming through the front door, that you would try to subdue her. So using some type of force, either a punch or grabbing and wrestling to the ground, whatever, but you would try something.
But investigators also figured out that this encounter continued upstairs because, number one, that's where they found her body. But they also found her clothing on the floor and they found blood on the bed. The other thing that investigators determined was that Karen Tipton was sexually assaulted, physically tortured over what they believed, Gibbs, was a pretty long period of time. But at some point, they figured out that Karen got out of the bedroom and made it to the top of the staircase before she was grabbed, and that's where she was killed. But ultimately, Gibbs, she was stabbed 28 times and her throat was cut. So like I said, this was a very brutal murder. So what we have so far, Daniel Wade Moore has told investigators that he was there, but that he didn't kill Karen Tipton. The only evidence that police really had was a couple of hair samples that apparently were in poor condition. But even though they were in poor condition, when they were analyzed, it came back that the hair was a 99.8% match to Daniel Moore. And after this, Gibbs, after the hair match, it was over. Police arrested Daniel Wade Moore, and he was going to go on trial.
Yeah.
For murder.
For murder, for sure.
Now, the prosecution came out and said, Daniel Wade Moore went there to rob the Tipton household to get money to buy drugs. And obviously their thinking, Gibbs, is that something went wrong and he ended up murdering Karen. But Moore's defense, when it came time for the trial, they tried to pin it on David Tipton, Karen's husband, saying that it was David that had the real motive. And their theory was that this was a crime of passion. The defense claimed that the Tiptons had an open marriage, and they even produced some evidence that one of their friends was communicating with Karen Tipton via email about the two couples swapping.
Yeah. A little open marriage,
Wife swap.
Wife swap. Or husband swap.
Or either way you want to look at it.
Sure. And she was flirty with her email reply back and forth. And it was said that David didn't appreciate that it was one thing, whatever the message was about, but it was just too flirty, probably maybe some jealousy behind it.
Yeah, anger, jealousy. That's what the defense is trying to say, right? Crime of passion. David Tipton killed his wife because of this wife swapping he wasn't happy about. Now, defense investigators found some evidence that on the day Karen Tipton died, she was on David's computer and she found that he had been looking at homosexual pornography. They produced this evidence at trial. So based on that, the defense made a claim that, Karen got upset about finding this on his computer. She confronted David about it, which started a huge fight that got out of control, and David ended up killing her, right? This is what the defense is offering.
Yeah, that's what, they're trying to put reasonable doubt into the juror's mind.
So you have the prosecution and the defense going back and forth as you would in any trial, both sides saying, hey, you don't have anything more than circumstantial evidence. But eventually the jury gets the case, they debate, and they make their ruling. And they find Daniel Wade Moore guilty of capital murder. And on January 23rd, 2003, he was sentenced to die by lethal injection. So Moore is sent to Alabama's death row. And he's sitting there, Gibbs, in a 5x9 cell.
So it was said that he was like 250 feet away from the, I guess you call it the death chamber?
Where they deliver the lethal injection.
Yeah. So he could see that every day, looking out his little square of his door.
Not a great view.
No.
For somebody that is on death row, scheduled at some point in time to die by lethal injection. That's not what you want to see every day. But as this is going on, his attorneys are appealing his conviction.
Which good attorneys would do.
And part of that appeal process involved prosecutors turning over a 245-page report that had been completed by the FBI.
Which was critical because during the trial, the prosecutors would say they never had this report when the defense asked for it. But now they have it, and now they're producing it. And now the prosecutor's going to say, well, it was never an official report. You asked for the official report. That's why we didn't turn it over. And the defense is saying, no, this is 245 pages. This is an official FBI report.
Right.
Yeah, we know why you didn't turn over after we read through it.
So obviously the defense is upset. The judge that presided over the case got upset after all this came to light. And you alluded to it, right? The prosecution didn't want the defense to have this report because it pointed to people other than Daniel Wade Moore as having a motive and an opportunity to commit this murder of Karen Tipton, which if the defense had been able to get that information, they would have used it.
Absolutely. They could have said, look, we know that the Decatur Police Department reached out to the FBI. We know that the FBI investigated and that they found out Karen was living a secret life. She was having affairs. And then they would say that Karen had to know her killer and that it potentially could have been her husband, David, or their best friend that wanted to do the husband-wife swap, and that it would be in the best interest of the police, investigators, whoever, to interview these guys again, or interview them, and have polygraphs done. So none of that was done. And again, the defense didn't know anything about this at the time of trial.
And as you said, Gibbs, the prosecution just kept on with their stance that, no, this was not an official report, and they didn't have to disclose it because of that fact, and that their case against Daniel Wade Moore was viable and should stand.
Yeah. And this defense team's good. I mean, their investigators are coming up with even more good luck, to help this appeal process. They would have a new witness that they found that would help the appeal because it's going to be the next door neighbor, Pam Smith. And she's going to say, I remember Karen going out to the mailbox around 3:25 p.m. that day. And to that point, after I heard she was dead, I called and talked to the police and told them that days after.
Well, and that's important because, as we mentioned, investigators put the timeline of her death sometime between 1 p.m. and 2:30. Well, that couldn't be true if Pam Smith saw her at the mailbox at 3:25.
Yeah, I mean, it's as far as the appeal goes, I think the fact that they withheld evidence is probably the biggest chunk of the appeal, but also to know that you have a witness that is under oath going to say, hey, I called you guys. I told you I saw her at 3:25. You didn't write it down. You don't have it anywhere in the report. You didn't mention it at the, to the defense at the first trial. Why is that? So, and I think when, the appeal judge reviews this new evidence, I think he feels the same way that, Daniel didn't get a fair trial and that he wasn't prosecuted fairly. And that would be grounds to turn over his conviction.
So in February 2005, this is 2 years after Daniel Wade Moore was sent to death row, a judge made a ruling that a new trial for Daniel Moore would subject him to double jeopardy for being tried twice for the same crime, and he ordered him released. And I found this very strange, Gibbs. I mean, we cover a lot of cases, especially on Unsolved, where somebody's convicted, new evidence comes to light, whatever it is, they get a new trial. I've never heard of an instance where they couldn't be tried again because it would be considered double jeopardy.
Yeah, it does make sense.
I mean, I get it. If you go through a trial and you're found not guilty, you can't be tried again for that same crime.
Yeah, but
people get new trials all the time after being found guilty. I just found it very strange.
And you can imagine how the Tipton family felt. It was rough being there. They moved to like 700 miles away to get away from the crime area, the crime scene. But then they get word that he's going to be let out. So they're upset. They're angry. The kids, the girls are scared because who did this to my mom? Are they going to come after us now? Is this guy going to come after us? Or whoever the police think, actually did to it now, are they going to try to find us? So they're scared. And of course, like I said, the husband, he's just furious. How could they let this guy that confessed to killing my wife, being in the house at the time she was killed, now he's out? How can they let that happen?
David was even quoted in a paper saying he wanted Daniel Moore dead. Now, he wasn't going to do it himself, but he sure was hoping that the state would take care of it for him.
Yeah. He felt eye for an eye, right? You took my wife's life. Your life needs to go as well.
I don't blame him if he thought, which I think he had every right to think, right, at the time that Daniel Wade Moore killed his wife. But Daniel's release didn't last long. The state convinced the courts to remand him back to jail pending appeal. And it would take a number of years, but the prosecution would eventually get a new trial set against Daniel Moore.
It would be in February 2008 that they would finally take Daniel to trial, which was about 9 years after Karen's murder. That's a long time.
It is a long time, but it also means that, even after he was released, we said it took a long time. It took 3 years.
Yeah.
After he was released and then put back in jail to get this new trial going. But this time would be a little different, right? For one, the FBI report was going to be introduced. The other thing that was going to be introduced by the defense was the neighbor that you talked about, Gibbs, that saw Karen by the mailbox. And in this trial, the defense hammered Karen's husband, David, right? They said he had the motive. He was also having affairs, is what they put forth at trial.
They were trying to say, basically, he loved his wife.
But he hated her as well. And the rage took over one night or one day, and the unfortunate happened. Well, the other thing they point to is that the evidence suggested that her killer was someone she knew, not a stranger. And this leads to the question, was Daniel Wade Moore a stranger to Karen or not? And we don't know that. Nobody can know that because, her husband said she probably would have remembered him.
Right.
But there's no way to know that for sure.
That's true.
I don't know that my wife would recognize someone that was in the house one time. Sometime later, they came to the door. I don't know. I'm not saying my wife. I don't know if I would recognize them.
Yeah.
So there's no way to know that. So again, prosecution, defense, they go back and forth. The jury gets the case. But after 6 days of deliberation, they were deadlocked. They told the judge they couldn't decide. They couldn't agree.
Which was not good for the prosecution because the judge is going to have to rule it as a mistrial.
Well, it's not good for Daniel Wade Moore really either.
No, it's not good for anybody on either side, honestly. I mean, if it benefits anybody, I guess it would benefit the prosecution because it doesn't end this journey that Daniel Wade Moore is on. It's going to continue.
Yeah, that's why I think it's worse for him because it means most likely, and we're going to find out that it does mean, they're going to try him again. But he's going to have to wait around, right? Trials just don't pop up. We saw the last one took 3 years to come to fruition.
Yeah.
That's just more time that you have to, if you didn't do it,
right,
that's more time that you have to spend in jail waiting for your trial date.
Yeah. And, the prosecution is dead set on this. They say that they know he's done this. He is the killer. They feel they have the evidence to show that, and they're going to continue to keep going for him to be found guilty of her murder. They're not going to give up on Karen. They're going to keep pushing forward.
Which in one way you have to say is admirable. I mean, you want the prosecution not to give up on the victim. You also want them to prosecute the correct person.
Yeah, well, that's true. Don't be wasting resources and time and energy if maybe you need to look in a few different directions now.
But I think Gibbs are too far down the road.
Well, I think so too. I think they were...
We're 9 years later. They've pinned all their hopes and energies on Daniel Wade Moore.
Yeah, I think they were sold on it for sure.
Yeah.
I think they said, hey, we got these hair samples. We got...
And I'm not bad-mouthing the prosecution because I truly believe that they thought Daniel Wade Moore was guilty.
But there was, some issues, right? Not turning over the FBI research, not taking the one witness about the timing. But then the other thing is, so the third trial is going to start. And the defense attorneys are, they know about some of the emails. They know about, some of the porn that was on it. But then they want to know what happened to the hard drive, the information that showed what was on the hard drive, that prosecution didn't turn that over to defense. And the defense is saying, where's that at? We want to look at that again. Why haven't you given that to us through all the discoveries? And, of course, they deny that they have it, but strangely, 72 hours before the trial begins, the FBI...
The third trial. Let's make
sure.
The
third trial, the FBI produced this information.
And this information that the FBI gave to the defense has some shocking elements to it. As it relates to this hard drive, for one thing, they discovered that sometime after Karen's death, but before the computer was turned over to police, someone went in and deleted files from the computer.
So maybe the fact that the police let David, her husband, go back into the house after he was cleared, do you think that might have had something to do with this? I mean, you think he's the only one that goes back to the house?
Well, that's what people are going to think, right? That's what's going to be whispered. That's what's going to be talked about. Who else had the opportunity to delete files that may or may not have been incriminating?
Yeah.
But probably were, because why would you delete them?
Would you have to delete stuff off your 3 laptops that you have throughout this house that I see?
What have I told you? If something ever happens to me, just come over, get the laptops, and throw them in the lake.
Throw them in the lake? Toss them all.
Don't tell nobody.
The 3 laptops, what's that thing called over there, that little thing?
An iPad?
An iPad, yeah. Your iPhone and...
No, I don't. What I have on my stuff that is incriminating is all the flipping research.
Yeah, the research would not be good. Especially...
That's why I always say, I hope nothing ever happens to my wife where I would be looked at as a possible suspect. My web searching browser history is
terrible.
How long does it take to choke a person?
Yeah.
What happens if, it's just all extra facets of research.
How do you get rid of this evidence?
Right.
Yeah.
It's stuff like that.
And then on top of it, they're going to find all the furry pornography stuff.
I can live with that.
Okay.
Daniel Moore was 34 years old by the time that his third trial began.
And this is like his whole adulthood, really. I mean, you think about it. He's probably spent most of his adult life on these 3 trials.
Oh, there's no doubt. So jury selection occurred, and the state prosecutor laid out the case against Daniel for a third time. The hair samples, the time that he spent in the home, installing the Tipton's alarm, his confession, which is a big one. It's hard to gloss over that. His confession of being there the day of the murder. They talked about his drug addiction and the fact that he was constantly needing money to support that drug habit.
Sure.
They also brought up his attempt to take his life that you talked about, Gibbs, with a penknife.
Right, yeah.
Which is a rough way to go. I wouldn't suggest doing it that way.
No, it takes a long time.
But then you get into the defense, and we talked about it, right? The defense has more ammo. They've got the FBI report. They bring up the neighbor that saw Karen Tipton at 3:25 p.m. And now they have more ammo in the form of this information regarding the missing computer file.
And on top of that, they found another new witness. They found a guy that was working on the pavement crew that was repaving the road out front of the Tipton's house on the day that she was murdered. And this guy would say that the husband arrived home earlier than 4:30. He knows that. He remembers that he was in the driveway prior to 4:30, which is the time that David said he got home. So we know David got home, according to this guy, earlier than he stated to the police.
And that doesn't make him look good, right? There are a number of things coming out that you have to say, Gibbs, don't make David Tipton look good.
Yeah, and I would just, also, I mean, this is a witness saying this is what he recalls.
Sure.
So
you take it that way. You
exactly.
have to. I guess I should say, if these things are true, I should preface my statement by saying that.
And I think the other problem this trial was when David Tipton was on the stand, he didn't come across jury friendly. And that's a problem. And it happens a lot that when you go in there more with an authoritative type of attitude towards the juror.
Well, it was said that the jury felt like instead of just answering questions and stating facts and all of those things, they felt he was trying to tell the jury what they should think.
Yeah. And that's always a problem, and I think that's why a lot of times the defense will keep certain people off the stand. That's why prosecutors won't put certain people on the stand.
You don't want to put a train wreck on the stand.
Because it can do a lot of damage to your whole case.
But you don't always have the option, right? The defendant has the option, but does David Tipton... Now, the prosecution doesn't have to call David Tipton, but that doesn't mean that the defense can't call him, right?
No, you're right.
He doesn't have the option to say, I'm not taking the stand.
Yeah, he can't say no because, you're right.
But there's another interesting fact that came out from the FBI report. And it was that Karen Tipton had told a friend that she would die before the age of 40.
And she did.
She was 39 years old.
Yeah.
When she died. So why did she say this?
And if this is what she felt was going to happen to her, when she told her friend this is well before the alarm was ever installed. So this is well before she even knew who Daniel Wade Moore was. So who was this person that she thought would be her demise?
It's a good question that we don't know the answer to.
But it's a strong statement to say to a friend.
If you told me I'm not going to make it to 72 next year, I would be wondering why you're saying that. I'd also be thinking, man, you look great for 71.
I was going to say, it's a weird number to put out there, man.
You're really taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
Very well.
You look great.
So this third trial lasted a month. It wrapped up. The jury deliberated for 7 days. You and I cover a lot of cases, Gibbs. 7 days is quite a period of time.
Yeah, that normally bodes well for the defense. I think the longer the jury takes, the better it is for the defense.
Because in a lot of the true crime all the time cases that we talk about, it's 2 hours, 3 hours, 4. I mean, it's hours and not days, because I think with all the evidence that is presented, the jury feels pretty confident.
Yeah, I think the longer they're in there, it's because they're thinking, and that means they've got reasonable doubt.
Well, 7 days to me, if I'm a defense attorney, I got to be jumping up and down about 7 days.
You're thinking there's got to be more than one person in there that's not sure, and that's great, because there's no way you might be able to flip one, but doubtful you're going to flip 2 or 3 people to get the verdict that the prosecutor would want.
But after these 7 days of deliberation, jurors found Daniel Wade Moore not guilty on all the charges.
Which is a dream for him. He's been waiting for this, right? He's not guilty of murder. He's not guilty of robbery.
Yeah.
Not guilty of kidnapping. Not guilty of sexual assault. He's in the clear.
And to that point, he walked out of the courtroom a free man. Something that he hadn't been for quite some time, other than that little short amount of time where the judge said that he couldn't be retried. Other than that, like you said, he had spent most of his adult life in prison.
It's a long time, man.
Now, you talk about Karen's family, right? There has been at least a shadow cast on her husband. We talked about some of the things that probably cast that shadow.
Yeah, but you have to wonder, I mean, she's got those daughters, and I'm sure, they're young women at this time, and they're just wondering, if it wasn't Daniel Wade Moore, who did it, and will we ever know? Will we ever know who killed Mom?
And I'm sure they don't believe it was their father.
No, I don't think so at all.
No. But from the standpoint of the police and the prosecutors, I don't think they've changed their thinking one bit, Gibbs. They still believe that Daniel Wade Moore is guilty of the murder of Karen Tipton. They feel like that first conviction that they got was the right outcome. And the prosecutor did something that I don't know if I've ever seen. I'm sure it's happened before. But after that last trial, that third trial was over, the prosecutor came out publicly and said Daniel Wade Moore was the killer, and the jury made a mistake. I'm sure it's been said before, but
I mean, it's bold.
It's a bold statement.
Sure,
to
after
make.
3 trials. And Daniel's mom will come out too, and she'll make a statement that she just feels like they took 10 years of his life, and he'll never get that back. And she's right. He'll never get that time back.
No, you can't get it back.
And it's always going to haunt him. It's always going to be something he'll be associated with. If you're going to live in Decatur, Alabama, people are going to remember this story. People are going to know when they hear your name. Why do we know that name? They're going to pick up their little phone, Google it, and go, oh.
And listen, I'm sure it's not just the police and the prosecutor's office and Karen's family that believe he's guilty. There are other people that, regardless of the outcome of the trial, feel like Daniel Wade Moore is guilty.
Yeah.
You know that.
Oh, sure. And
there's people that feel like he's not guilty. It happens in a lot of these cases, especially one like this where you don't have that hard evidence and you have a confession. A lot of people say, well, why would you confess? Why would anybody confess? But at the same token, we know from past cases that it happens. It happens quite a bit.
Yeah.
That people make confessions for a number of reasons. One being they just want it to end. Whatever the questioning, they can't handle it.
Yeah. Anxiety sneaks up. They're
like, just get me whatever needs to happen to get me out of this room right now.
Yeah.
Is what I will do.
And I'll worry about it later.
And whatever happens later happens. But I think it's a very tough case.
It is. And David came out and he would make a statement saying, for no good reason, she died very badly. And the girls have gone a lifetime without their mama. The fact that I can see them alive and happy and normal and see parts of Karen in them, that just means that she's still with us here and in them.
As far as Daniel Wade Moore goes, like we said, if he's innocent, as the jury declared him to be, he lost 10 years of his life. He moved out of the state of Alabama. He did try unsuccessfully to bring a civil case after the first trial against the city of Decatur, the police department, I think even some of the prosecutors, claiming that he didn't get a fair trial, his constitutional rights were denied, but a judge threw that out. So I don't know if he'll ever be successful after being thrown out the first time, but I don't know how much he's tried, Gibbs, after that. We couldn't find much information on that.
No.
Because things did come to light.
Yeah.
At certain points later on around trials 2 and 3 that maybe could have added some ammunition to his case.
Could have, yeah. He was arrested in June of 2012 for robbing a Wally World. Now, I'm sure everybody's thinking National Lampoon, Wally World, love that movie, Chevy Chase. But no, Wally World in Alabama is convenience stores. So he robbed a convenience store, kind of like a 7-Eleven.
Now, see, when I think of Wally World, I think Walmart.
You were a manager at Walmart, weren't you?
I was in my early years, and that's what we always called it, Wally World.
Wally World.
You going to Wally World? Sure.
Yeah.
Get me.
I always think Wally World. I always
balls.
go National Lampoon.
Well, I think of that too, but
yeah.
I equate Wally World with Walmart.
Yeah, and for robbing that Wally World, he got 2 years in prison and 8 years of probation.
And he's had a number of driving related arrests as well.
Yeah.
In 2011, he was arrested for driving under the influence. He apparently was on the wrong side of the road.
Well, that's not a good sign.
Got in an accident, left the scene of an accident. So he got arrested for that. And then just this year in August of 2018, Moore was arrested for driving with a suspended driver's license.
Yeah. Well,
so he's had his troubles with the law since all of, since the trials and all of that. But
sounds like it's just following him around. You know?
I think this is just a tough case. This is one that people are going to listen to, and there's going to be some division about Daniel Wade Moore.
Yeah, I really feel like on this one here, the prosecution dropped the ball.
Oh, I do too.
I think you can't leave out a 245-page FBI report. It's going to catch up to you.
Well, and the big problem with that is that, so they got so focused on Moore.
Yeah.
Probably to the exclusion of others.
Sure.
That's probably a fair statement. but it also really hurt their case against Moore.
It did.
If he really had something to do with it, all the stuff that they did incorrectly, the prosecution up front, pretty much torpedoed it.
I mean, if the FBI tells you the report that, hey, we think it possibly were these people, why wouldn't you pull them in and go ahead and question, submit for a polygraph? So now either it's going to show that they have something going on, right? It's going to show them that there might be some foul play, or it's going to give you exactly what you need to not allow the defense to use it against you.
Yeah,
You say, hey, we did a polygraph. They're clear, and it's no longer an issue. So you either do one or the other, but either way, it benefits your case or benefits solving the murders, what it benefits.
But to me, it just goes back to, what is the job of the prosecution? Is it to put somebody away, or is it to get to the truth?
Well, that's a tough question.
And I know in a lot of these cases, I feel like the line is very blurred.
And it shouldn't be, right? It should just be get to the truth. But I think there's a lot of pressure.
There is a lot of pressure
in that role to, one, be successful in winning cases, and two, to make the public feel safe.
Right, to wrap things up, right? To put a bow on it, to complete it.
It's tough because when someone walks in and says, I did it, or I was there when it happened, it's a confession. You got a couple hair samples that are...
Yeah, they had evidence.
So look promising for sure. And I'm sure if you actually had all the trial notes, I think if I was the defense attorney, I would have said, so you say you got his hair samples. He worked in the house months ago.
And I would be surprised if they didn't.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's what they did. So, again, I just think that if you have other viable rabbit holes, you should cross them off your list. Check them out and not leave them open like they did. And you definitely don't hide evidence. I mean, you don't say, I don't know where that report is from the FBI about what was happened to that hard drive. We knew that they saw her at 3, the neighbor said 325. We just didn't say anything about it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. All right, we got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Yeah, let's hear.
Hi there, Mike and Gibby. This is Amy calling from Tooele, Utah. And I've been listening to your show for over a year now, I think. I love it. It's my favorite of the true crime that I listen to. And I did just have a suggestion for an unsolved. I'm from Montana originally, and there is a suspected serial killer up there. He's dead now, but my mom was a corrections officer, and she had the pleasure of watching over him when he was in the hospital before he died. And he's suspected of being a serial killer. He was in prison for being a child molester, but his name is Bar Jonah. He's suspected also of being a cannibal. So he's suspected in the disappearance of Zach Ramsey up there. It's believed that he murdered him. And he also had barbecues at his house, and they believe that he had possibly cooked and served this poor kid to his neighbors. So that might be one to look at. There was a previous case you guys did where you were talking about, you called it Helena, Montana. It's called Helena, just FYI. And then, Gibby, don't feel too bad. My husband and my mother-in-law are both from Ohio, and they both say cousin. So you're not the only one. All right, well, it's a pleasure listening to you guys. Stay safe and keep your own time ticking, guys.
Hey, thanks, Amy.
Yeah, appreciate that. We got some good information in there.
Maybe I'm related to your husband. I don't know.
Maybe
he's my cousin.
Maybe. I keep getting these emails, Gibbs, from people that say, my so-and-so says cousin.
Cousin.
Okay, that may be true, but that doesn't make it right. And it doesn't mean I'm going to stop giving you grief about it.
Yeah, it's all right, man. It's all right. I can handle that.
I know you
After
can.
the week I've had, I can handle it.
If that's all you have to handle,
yeah.
I think your life will be okay.
Yeah, I'll be all
now,
right.
I will say we've got to take a look into that one that she mentioned.
Yeah.
Bar Jonah. That sounds like there could be
and I
some...
wonder how many people have probably had human flesh.
And didn't know about
Didn't know it throughout.
I don't know. How many cannibals are there?
I mean, we had that guy up in, we never did the story. We looked at it. Just wasn't enough there to do it yet. The Cleveland.
Metheny or Matheny. Or,
yeah, there you go. Yeah, doing little hamburgers.
Yep.
Had a little meat in it.
That was a little.
Then we had Picton. We know that
I'm sure more than people would like to know.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, I think it would freak people out.
I don't know how many real true cannibals there are.
The worst part would be somebody that, did have it and actually find out later and actually can recount the day that, I was there, I had it. And if they ever said like, this is the best barbecue I ever had. Believe
me, if I have, I don't want to know.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to know either.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. My name is Megan and I am from Dallas, Texas. I'm originally from Tyler, Texas. I just wanted to say thank you so much for your podcast. I'm definitely binging it right now as I drive through Texas. It's very interesting, and I'd like to suggest a crime, I guess. It's the KFC murders that happened, Kentucky Fried Chicken murders that happened in Kilgore, Texas, back in, I think, the 80s or 90s. It's technically solved, but it could be unsolved. It's just a very interesting crime. So thank you so much for all you guys do, and I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
All right. Awesome.
Good. Thank you.
Again, shows you how far behind we are on voicemails.
Getting a little caught up. So I hope you had a good Thanksgiving.
Yeah, hope you had a good Thanksgiving. Now, what I enjoyed about that one, Gibbs, is that she had to make sure that we understood that KFC stood for Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Hey, I've been to the original KFC
down in
Corbin.
Kentucky.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not that far away from it, but I just got a kick out of that. Now I know we're not always the brightest bulbs.
Speak for yourself.
But I did get that part. I did know what KFC was.
Speak for yourself.
Hey guys, this is Patrick Lisa from Illinois. Illinois. To break it for the day. I would like to know, I appreciate so much you taking the Thanksgiving episodes. I was born on Thanksgiving. And in fact, Unsolved episodes with the bombing actually happened on my birthday in 1985. So these were dark subjects. These were hard to listen to. But once again, you guys stood out from the crowd and you added lightness in there without being disrespectful. I really appreciate it. And please teach Gibby. There's no noise in Illinois. Quiet. Have a great day, guys. See you soon. Bye.
All right. Always love to hear from Lisa.
Do what?
There's no noise in Illinois.
I think it can be a pretty loud place.
In your head, I imagine there's a lot of things that are can be pretty loud.
Yeah. Don't want to be in my head right now, man.
Uh-uh.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. My name's Rick. I'm calling from San Diego, California. Wondering if you've had any requests on the Chelsea King and Amber Dubois murders that took place here in San Diego some years back. Just a thought for an episode later. Bye.
All right. Short and sweet. From San Diego, where it's always 72 degrees.
My fellow San Diegoans.
San Diegoans. Stay classy.
Isn't that funny? We talked about...
Yeah, you talked about it earlier.
Yeah.
So I don't... One of those names sounded somewhat familiar, but I don't think we have them on the list.
No.
So we're going to have to look into those.
Jot them down.
All right. That is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So from Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
If you're running a retail business, don't let disorganized order fulfillment cause chaos. Use ShipStation instead. From running a business out of your garage to multiple warehouses, ShipStation is ideal for every phase of your growth. Save time with one login for all your stores and by automating tasks. Plus, you'll get the best shipping rates from global carriers. Calm the chaos with the shipping software that delivers. Start a free trial at shipstation.com/audio. That's shipstation.com/audio.